Today we have this custom 1911 to share with you. Utilizing an Advantage Arms upper assembly out of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Assembled on a lower receiver manufactured by Caspian Arms out of Hardwick, Vermont. Serial number on this one is 70102. Chambered in 22 long rifle. And the model on the slide reads 1911-22C. So the C signifies commander length barrel. This is a 4 1/4 inch barrel, opposed to most other 22 conversion kits for 1911s are going to be a government length barrel, which is 5 inches, just 3/4 of an inch longer. Advantage Arms utilizes a very lightweight polymer magazine with a steel strip on the follower that locks the slide to the rear on the last round, which is really convenient. Now it's able to do this for two reasons. One, the guide rod is tightened down into the slide stop pin. So in order for the paddle to move in the first plate, the paddle needs to be independent from the pin. So these are two pieces. These are two parts, unlike a traditional 1911 slide stop, which is all one piece. But more importantly, you've got this steel plate machined into an aluminum slide. Most, if not all, 22 conversion kits that are sold commercially today are made with aluminum slides, opposed to an old Colt, which is made of steel. So if you allow a steel slide stop to lock to the rear on an aluminum slide without a steel plate, like a Signer, a Jonathan Arthur Signer unit, then eventually the corner of that slide release notch will get eaten away, and then the slide will be won't be as desirable. It'll look real ugly down there. You can fix it, but it just won't hold to the rear anymore, and it'll slip. Never dry fire these conversion kits. If you dry fire, the pin is going to strike the top of the chamber wall and deform the chamber in time, and then you won't even get a cartridge into the chamber. Now that can be fixed, of course, if that does happen, but the more you do that, the more you eat away at the chamber wall, which gives less support for the cartridge during discharge. So that's something you want to avoid completely. So now we're going to talk about proper disassembly and reassembly of this pistol. Of course, the first thing you want to do is make sure that it's clear of any live ammunition, but leaving the slide locked to the rear and using the Allen wrench that comes with the conversion kit. If you lose this wrench, it's essentially a 4mm will work. You just want to turn counterclockwise. A full turn is all that's necessary to pull tension off this pin. Now sometimes once you take the tension off the rod, the barrel gets a little looser, and what happens is the ejector rises up a little bit, and it might catch on the slide like it is right there. You just want to push down on the ejector so the slide will come forward. Push the pin from the right side, and when you push on it, it'll expose the pin just a little bit so you can get your fingernail under there, pull the pin out, and both the pin and the paddle will come out together. And then at this point, you just pull the slide right off the frame. Now again, don't dry fire. If you dry fire at this point, you're going to damage the frame or damage the hammer or crack the hammer. Now to disassemble the upper assembly, push forward on the barrel, which will expose the guide rod. Using your wrench, continue to turn counterclockwise and pull that rod, get the rod unthreaded from the barrel lug all the way. Now once it's unthreaded, when you pull the rod out, you want to make sure to keep control of that spring. You don't want the spring to get damaged. And then the barrel pulls right out the back. Now as for the lower, you can disassemble the lower by punching out the mainspring housing pin, just like a traditional 1911, and the whole lower receiver comes apart. However, at this point with the hammer to the rear, if we just push on the pin, the safety pin from the right side, and start wiggling and get it out, just like a traditional thumb safety, we can then remove the plunger tube assembly, grip the grip safety, control the hammer, pull the trigger, and let it come down softly on the frame. Now at this point, the grip safety can easily come out because of this little half round notch that's been filed in the arm. That little clearance makes it possible to get by this lug in the frame so that you can simply remove the grip safety without having to take the whole lower receiver apart. You can clean and lube. You have access to the mainspring housing assembly, the sear and disconnector, and even the trigger. So from this point, you want to start by putting the legs or the bottom of the grip safety back in first, and then pivot the arm in until you find that sweet spot. Get the plunger tube assembly back in. Before cocking the hammer, it's best to put the pin of the thumb safety back in. Get the lug started through the frame and then get it landed on top of the detent. Now you can get the hammer cocked back a little easier. Now utilizing a flat tool like this little standard 1/8 Craftsman screwdriver, you just want to displace that detent, get it pressed in so that you can push down on the thumb safety. Now the sweet spot is the little corner of that thumb safety, what I call the knuckle. You want to get the knuckle lined up with the plunger tube assembly, and once you get the detent pushed in, it should just drop right down. There it is. Oh, look at that. The slide looks like that's a manufacturer's date. March of 2026, so that may be the case because I didn't receive this until after that date. If you know more about Advantage Arms uppers, please tell us in the comments below if that's the manufacturer's date or not. I'd really like to know. That's kind of cool. So insert the barrel, make sure you're seated into the extractor. Before you put the spring back in, get the rod started. And then start the spring in. And you want to get this rod turned in just far enough. If you let the rod come out that lug too far, you won't be able to get the pin back in. Now you can see through the slide stop pinhole that the lug is properly lined up and the rod isn't in the way. Take the paddle and the pin, put them back together. Now notice there's a step right there on the slide stop pin. That's where the paddle freely rides. Get the pin inserted into the frame, but before you drive that pin all the way home, let the paddle move at an angle and get in front of that detent first so you don't have to fight the detent. Push the paddle all the way down and then push the pin all the way in. there is something in the way. Oh, no, there it is. Okay, now you've got the pin all the way drifted through, but the pin isn't inserted all the way yet. You need to get the paddle moved just enough so that it can get back past that last lip. And to do that, just put your thumb here on the end of the serrations and pull to the rear, and you can move it up and down into the rear just as you need to get that pin to drop right back in. That's a lot easier than fighting the detent. Lock the slide to the rear. Tighten down on the guide rod. Now you don't need to muscle it down, but just make it like finger tight. Now from this point, if you drop the slide and it moves real sluggish, then you made that rod too tight. But if you hear that crispy, clicky sound, that's beautiful. Thanks for watching.